horses were pretty innovative. They had this sliding deal here. You turn this knob and it would make your cut higher, or you turn this knob and make the cut lower. When you release the upper arm and brought it down, it would rest down against that, and that would be the height of your mowing. It was a pretty neat design. I know a guy that his grandfather used to work at Wheel Horse up in South Bend, Indiana, and he actually was one of the designers of this piece. Since everything is pretty well seized up underneath, it's been rusted over the years, I'm going to pull this side steel off, which holds up the mower deck. I'm going to pull that off, and then that way the assembly should slide over and then come down. And I figure that's going to be the best way to get this assembly off of here. So we're going to go ahead and bust these nuts and get this piece off. Got the pin, so this should disconnect from the back side. There we go. So now that we've got this pin and this connection disconnected from this, should be able to pull this whole assembly off, which then will take the belt and it'll take the entire drive down under here, and it will remove it from this belt drive. What we're going to be trying to do is start taking apart some stuff here in the back, try to get these fenders off of here, because we're ultimately going to get to this transmission that's back here, this unidrive. As you can tell, the pulley here on the down on the underneath, we'll zoom in on that here. So right down here is the pulley. This pulley is powered by this clutch lever here. What this does is this engages the clutch when you push down. So what we're going to be doing is I'm trying to get this unidrive out of here. So the next steps are taking these fenders off up here, getting some other stuff out of the way, throwing some other stuff away, cleaning up this back end here, sucking some stuff out of here, and then going from there. So this is what we're focused on. We're going to get this thing out of here and probably try to pop wheels off, things like that, break into this transmission, figure out what's going on, so that way we can get this all fixed. As you can tell, the motor's almost out. Some of these bolts, even though I've PB blasted them, I've busted a couple. There's one there, and there's one back here on the top of the motor I've busted. Going to clean this motor up here, get all these fins cleaned out. I've got a degreaser that I'm going to use. I'm using Zap degreaser. I picked that up at my hardware. I'm going to use that. I'm going to clean up all this grease on here, get it all cleaned off, and then I'm going to clean it, prime it with high temp paint, paint everything from here down. This upper part's not going to get painted. It's going to get taped off. I'm going to clean all the fins out. And then of course up here on the front, from here down, is going to get painted. The new cover on the points is going to get painted as well. I'm going to take the motor off so I can degrease the frame and scrub it down. We're going to sandblast the frame once I get the rest of all the stuff off of here. All right guys, we got the rims painted. They are an ivory color. I used Rust-Oleum, put a gray primer on them. These are now painted. Got those ready to go. Tires should be coming in a couple of days here. The frame is ready to go. It had a little paint issue with it, but we got that corrected. As I've got 2 coats of paint on this, I've got 2 coats of paint on the wheels and all my little parts over there, and even this part. What we're gonna do is we're gonna assemble it, and then when we put all the bolts through and everything else, then we're gonna paint everything all together as one when the rear end assembly, which it's over there, right up there. We got all those pieces, we'll put them all together. Then we're gonna go and put one more coat of paint over all of the red. That includes getting all the bolts and nuts and everything, making sure that those are covered in red, because I don't want something like that just to stand out. The red should be red, almond should be, or ivory color should be ivory. All right guys, the rear tires came. They look really good. They're a 6-ply tire. I thought they were a 4-ply. They're actually a 6-ply tire. That's awesome. They actually came to my doorstep just like this with the label on them. Kind of funny. But anyway, these tires, a little bit of excess rubber in between the treads. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take those and peel those out, or I'll take a little utility or a little bit of a blade, go in there and just trim those out and clean them up. But no, the tires came in today. I've got paint on my rims. There's, I think, 2 or 3 coats on the rims. They're going to get a final coat after I get them mounted, or at least get the tire inside the rim. Once I do that, I'm going to cover the tire up so it doesn't get paint on it, spray it, set it in the sun, let it bake. Easiest way to mount tires. First of all, I got my tire tool here. I've got this tire iron because I've always wanted to pick up one. It makes it a little bit easier, but I picked up 2, so it makes it easier. I can work my way around. But make sure you get soapy water. You know, cover these with soapy water around the edges. That's going to make it slide in a little bit better. I'm going to take the good side of the wheel, put it down, and work from the back side in. It should be able to pop over this lip on the back side. And if I damage up the back side or nick it a little bit, it's not going to damage it that much where you're going to see nicks or anything in the front side of the wheel. Trying to keep as much of the damage, if there is, to the paint and everything to the back side. But anyway, these are looking good. We're going to flip them over, we're going to put them down, and we're going to get these tires mounted. I've done some wet sanding, and I do a lot of wet sanding on paint especially. Paint will build up in your sandpaper, and if you don't use water, it will build up a lot quicker. It will actually allow your sandpaper to last longer. So when you put your first coats on, yeah, you can tell it looks really wavy and whatnot, but that was just a first coat of red that we had on there. And we're going to use this putty. It's a glazing compound. It's kind of a spot, because the places that are imperfections on here that are actually standing out because I got a bright light right above it, those are minor imperfections. Plus I sanded a little bit more on these. I always do that on the first coat, because the first coat I want to get it down, get any of the primer that may have had something I missed on it. So we got those pieces going. And then we got over here, this is all painted. I just put a final top coat on it, and it's looking really good. Again, I am using canned paint. I know a lot of people say don't use cans. But with a small tractor like this that isn't big, and if I need paint, most hardwares, even Walmart, has this paint in stock. It's the Regal Red that I'm using. I was asked around a lot of people. They said if you're going to go that kind, go Regal Red. That's what I've done. It looks really good, especially since it's all being repainted. You're not going to be able to tell the difference. Got the wheels mounted. Got my parts for the back ones, look really good. Got a little touch-up paint to do on those, since mounting tires. Just gonna scrape some stuff up a little bit, but it's all starting to come together. Got the boot installed, got the new seat cover. As you can see, I've done some wet sanding. If you look over here, you can see it hazed. Sorry about that. You can see the haze. And you can still see somewhat of the ridge. Again, I have sealed up the ridge. I've welded it all the way across. I've welded it underneath. So that's all one piece. So that there shouldn't be any cracking or anything to happen there. That's what we've done. But let me tell you a little trick on this painting. When you do each coat of paint, you're going to want to wet sand. And I have different levels of sandpaper. When I first started out, I started out with, let's see if it's down here. It is. I started out with 200 and 220. So 200 was when I was just dry sanding. This is wet sanding. I started out with 220, and that's when I had any kind of Bondo or any kind of filler on the surface. I used this to at least get it smoothed down to the surface. Then I jumped over and I started using a 1000 grit after I had wet sanded with the 220. Now, there are other levels in between that you can use, but because I got so close to what I needed, I went ahead and just started using the 1000. Now the 1000, all you have to do is in between coats, you wet sand it. And to get that smooth, perfect finish, a lot of people just spray and then they'll spray a clear coat on and they don't get that automotive smooth finish. Well, I like an automotive smooth finish, especially on my metal pieces. But the sheet metal, you can sure make look perfect. And that tank, even though it's an aluminum tank, if you put a good etching primer down, you can put any color of paint you want on that. So what I've done is I used an etcher primer, primed it, sanded it, primed it again, sanded it, and then I put my first base coat on, and that is actually the second base coat. Now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be wet sanding this one more time after I put another coat on. But there are some imperfections in this, and in these tanks, there always were imperfections. You can actually see them. You can see the little dots where this was put together, because that's the actual tank right there. And then if you look over here, there's some pits and some holes that are in the top. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of filler and it's a small glazing filler. It's nothing like the huge Bondo stuff. It's just a smooth glazing filler, and I'm going to fill those in. Same thing over here. I've got a few imperfections on this. They're not too bad. This right here just has to be resanded. I'll put another coat of red on this, and then when you put your red or your final coat of red or your final coat of color, come back with it within an hour and spray your clear coat. And you can let that clear coat adhere over the top of the red if you do it within an hour. If not, you have to wait 24 to 48 hours before you can spray another coat or of a different color on top. Cleanup wise, spray cans, second to none. And you can, again, get a perfect finish. But if you take those tips, wet sand in between each of these coats, and you're gonna get a beautiful finish when you're all done. Remember, the final coat of red, I put 3 coats of red on all this. Every piece will have 3 coats of red. On that third and final coat, go ahead and spray within an hour, within 1 hour, spray your clear coat over the top of it. Don't put it on heavy, put a nice thin coat of clear coat. Let that dry. It will dry in a few hours, especially if the humidity's down, the temperature's up. You should be able to get those to really adhere. Keep them out of the sun for the first hour to hour and a half. Then you can take them, slide them outside if you've got a nice sunny day. Let them bake in the sun. Let that metal get really hot, let it soak in. And a lot of times they'll tell you not to do that kind of stuff. Well, from experience, and I've painted a lot of things with spray cans, I've done a lot of work with spray cans. The sun will help you once it already dries. So let this dry for a few hours, then set it in the sun. It will bake that finish on. By evening, you should be able to pull that metal in, let it cool down, and then do another wet sand on the clear coat. By that evening, you should be able to put another clear coat on and do it a little bit faster than waiting the 24 hours before next coat, because it will have adhered and sucked into that paint. So that's just a little trick I've got with this. This is what I've done for years on projects, especially if I'm trying to get that automotive smooth finish. That's what's going to give you the automotive smooth finish on those. This Kohler, we're going to paint that in white, and it's going to be touched up, and that will be actually white, because from what it looked like on all of them, it came out of the factory with white, not the almond or ivory color. So that'll be white. The wheel horse on the front of that will be white. We're going to do that for these units, and we're going to make this thing look pristine. It'll look awesome. Gotta go get a belt today, so that way I can put my starter and on here and get that generator starter on. have that bolted up. Already got the belt on the other side ready to go. It's pretty much hooked up, minus the wiring. The wiring just needs to be redone. Now, one other thing that I did, if we look up here on the shifter knob, this shifter knob, if you look, it doesn't look exactly like the old one. The old one that came off was grayed out. It had a haze to it. I used Plasti-Dip spray on this. Set it down on a nail, set this on top of it, and sprayed Plasti-Dip, so it gave it a new coating. Same thing with the handle here. This handle almost looks brand new on this adjustment knob. What I did is I took this, ran a bolt down the top of it, ran a nut up to the bottom of it, and then took that, drilled a hole in the wood, and dropped the bolt down into the wood. I then sprayed this piece with Plasti-Dip. It looks like it's brand new. It looks like it came out of the factory. I'm pretty impressed with that. I think Plasti-Dip is a really good product so far. It's the first time I've really gotten to use it, and I played around with it a little bit more, and I have to say, pretty neat product.